Everything's running. Hello, welcome back to Reloved Guitars in sunny, no, grey Devon. But, as somebody pointed out the other day, at least we have kind of nice weather mixed with a bit of okay weather, mixed with, in other words, it doesn't get roastingly hot like the desert environments that some people are unfortunate enough to live in. So yeah, I complain about it because it's never sunny enough. But the truth is I should be much more grateful for what it is, not what it isn't. Anyhow, here we have the first of two of Buzz's guitars, and these the first one is Yamaha APX600. And this is in for a setup. It's got a very high action at the moment. I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah. And it's a bit of a curvature in the fingerboard. It's sort of diving a little bit here, and there's a bit of a little bit of bellying going on here. Yeah. So we've got, the result is of all those things is we've got a high action, and we've got an unpleasantly plastic nut at the other end. Now, those things are both fixable. The only concern I would have about reducing the action on this, as you can probably see there, if I can get the focus to do its thing, is if we take that, we've got loads of room to take, or plenty of room to take that saddle down at that point. But if I do, then we're going to soon, eventually we'll run out of angle there. So I've sort of made sure that Buzz is okay with this if I were to cut small notches in here where necessary. Probably only just on the E and the B, if anything. But, you know, for this sort of stage of regaining playability, that's really the only options we've got. There's not a lot else to really work on in many ways. So I look at this thing and I wonder, is there a way? I'm not using my magic arm, excuse the expression. I'll see if I can remove this. So I've got a magic arm doing nothing, and it seems silly because it's a great big heavy thing. Could I hold on a second, could I attach this and grab my magic arm? Maybe, not very well, possibly. Ooh, let's see what's going on. Just, if you forgive me a minute, I'm just doing some adjustifications. That goes down like that. No, that's not very good. Just humour me for a minute. I'm sort of looking to see what I can do to get me a bit of. Okay, so that wouldn't be good. But then if I take this bass bit off, which I can do, just excuse the wobbling. Try and hold on to it while you do that, matey. Take the bass bit off. Now I've got myself a thing that I can really move around. Ooh, but of course I do want this to get in on into the sort of close-up world, really, which is not that end of the game. So if I end up using this, it's great. I get a bit of a better view, maybe from down here, something like that. But that's a lot of condemning myself to not being able to use the close-ups. Although I can do handheld close-ups by taking this off and running down here. Wouldn't it be wouldn't it be nice to have one at either end? Yes, of course it would. But okay, anyway, so let's see. We'll see what we can do with camera angles. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do with this. I mean, I can't remember the price range of these, but you know, they're quite nice. But it suffers from some of those challenges that these guitars get. If you also look at this, the string alignment, I'll try and get the thing, that's about midpoint actually. So you can see it's pretty heavily biased towards the, things falling off that side a bit. And if we just whiz this down, the problem is, if anything, the bridge is slightly misplaced ultimately. You could try and sort of rectify it by pulling these, making some notches going the other way. But you're going to get pressure on this thing. So I think it's not unplayable. I think it will feel a bit better. But you can see that it's a bit of a unbalanced misalignment. Yeah. Also, what I noticed when this came, when Buzz brought this over, it's got It's got this horrible cheap Chinese brand. I mean, it's made in Indonesia, but it's got what I would think is the cheap Chinese things. Those things being strings, sorry, and they've got the horrible copper look about them. So what I'm just trying to do here, but this is a much better way of doing it. Hello, goodbye, hello. I can now put this back in here. You feeling ill yet? We'll be done in a second. Sorry, this is not a good way to treat the expensive camera equipment. So that won't, I can't grab that with that. Let me just see if there's anything I can do that makes any sense at all. If I grab this with this, I could put that in there, which gives me a bit of a, whoops, a bit of a shot from high up there. Maybe I can shove all of that in there, if you'll excuse the thing. Made in Italy, this magic arm thing, and it has been brilliant. I mean, it's pretty faultless actually as a device. But okay, so now I've got this thing. I've got this thing attached. It's going to put a hell of a lot of strain on the bench here because it's sort of trying to fall over. But you know what? I can do that, and I can take that off by hand. Hello, I'm in the picture. Well, I mean, it's not really that dramatic a shot, but in a minute when I need to do a close-up, I'll grab it and place it down there. So I did a quick measure on this, and we've got 3.6 millimeters and 3.1 on here. So what we really want is 2 and 1.5, which if the target is 2, 1.5, 1.5 and 2, then we're going to need to take minus 1.6 on the treble side and minus 1.6 on the bass side. So that's a straight cut, and then we'll be left with whatever we're left with, height and break angles, and we'll work with that afterwards. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove. Oh, sorry, one thing I did check, it was the relief, and there's absolutely no relief in this neck at all. So I would think it would be a good idea for an acoustic guitar to have just a little bit of neck relief. So I'm going to try, it's not very easy to do this, try and get the hex key in there, and I'm going to give it a couple of turns and see if anything happens. So let's have just a feel. Now, because this curves quite a bit after the joint where it joins the body, now I've got a bit more relief, that's good. Okay, a bit more, about 0.15. Okay, so now I'm going to show the amazing flexibility of this system. He said, releasing the entire stand, flying you up to the corner and plonking you down to look at the nut end of things. So, you know, it's sort of doable. Right, so here comes the fun. You know what's going to happen next, don't you? Yes, it is time to knock off the nut. Knock off the nut in the time-honoured fashion. Now, what is the structure of things? What are the structure of stuff at this end? Well, we've got a nut, and it's in quite a deep slot here. So the first thing to do is, if we bash the hell out of this, it's not going to want to come out very well. Doesn't look like it's overly stuck in this slot, but we don't know. So I'm going to tap it to see if we loosen it, and if we loosen it and we can wiggle it out, then all is good. But we may not be able to. Now, just a thought. Should I have done that? Yes. You know what I'm doing? I'm not going to do the nut yet. Sorry, silly me. I'm going to do the when you have at least two parts of the. Right. Let's start again. Three parts of your playing action, physical, mechanical parts are I think I'm at the wrong end now. Are the saddle height, or the bridge height on an electric guitar, the nut height. Will you come out? The nut height. This doesn't want to bite at this end. Let's take it this end. So the bridge height, or the bridge action, the nut action, and the relief in the neck. So we're going to take care of these three. Right. So I know which end is which because one's higher than the other anyway. So the bass end is the taller end, which is fine, and we're going to have a little bit of a slope anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark up the amount I want to take off here. So that's I need my micro gauge. I've just spent the last 2 hours on the JT rewiring his made in Korea Strat guitar, which has been a bit of a challenge because I bought this preamp from a Polish seller. The first one I got, I was pretty sure it didn't work by the time I tried to fit it several times in a row to different guitars or in different configurations. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't very experienced with it, so I reckoned it could also be part of it could be my inexperience at doing it. So I was fairly open-minded about whether I'd messed up or not. Anyway, I said to the guy, I didn't think it was working, but I wasn't sure if it was blah blah. Anyway, it was a bit weak on the instruction side of things too, so there's a lot of room for improvement on helping someone like me to get this thing working. But anyway, the guy was very helpful in the sense that he sent me a new one, and I fitted it, and I finally got it working on one of my guitars, which is great. The only problem is, it's not his fault, but my problem is it needs to be, I can't, the way I've put it on my guitar, I can't adjust the trim, the amount of, you know that thing, boost. Anyway, that's just a physical problem to solve for another time. But in the short term, so I was very pleased to have got it working, and I know that when I take the strings off next time, I'll find another way to set it so I can raise or trim tame the, it was too much boost actually, so I wanted to just be able to control it, so I'm going to figure out a way of doing it. But on JT's guitar, I've made a little extra hole, or there's an extra hole in the scratch plate, and we can do it through that, which was very cool, except I spent a good few days, or no, a couple of days now, designing and redoing this whole wiring thing for his guitar, and in the end it comes down to having put a new set of strings on and probably at least a good couple of new pots in there. It turns out that actually I think the first one, the one I'm trying to fit, turns out I'm pretty certain it is faulty, and so I've kind of double checked it by trying it on JT's. Now I know how to wire up the true bypass side of things as a switch to make it work. Anyhow, the long and short of it is I've had to pause that one now, and I'm going to have to contact the seller and say, okay, look, this first one I think is faulty, can I buy another one, because he replaced the first one, so I've had my money's worth. I'll buy another one, and then when I take that one out, I'll send the defunct one back, and hopefully we'll be all right. The only annoying bit is that to make it work or position it where I needed it so I could get access to the trim pot, I fitted the I kind of built a little mound of JB Weld, or quick steel I suppose you'd call it, and that and don't worry, I did check whether it's got any conductive properties at all, and the manufacturer says it's actually an insulator, not a conductor. But anyway, so it's currently sitting on underside of the scratch plate on this, or wherever you are, on this, in this, kind of propped up by this lump of quick steel stuff. So it's going to be difficult, or it might be difficult to get it off, but either which way I have to get it off, and then I'll do the same to the next one, put it in place, so we should be all right. So we're sort of slowly getting there on this project, or that project, but it's a bit grinding my teeth a little bit as we go. It just takes a lot of time. So what I'm doing now on this one is I'm wearing this thing down. Now you notice that the first thing I'm doing is I've taken the measurement that I want to reduce at the last fret, and I'm working to that measurement. Now if you think about it, that isn't the entire amount that I will go down on this saddle, because 1.6 millimeter reduction at the last fret actually translates into translates into more if you get my drift, at the bridge itself. So you have to kind of divide 1.6 at the last fret. That's 75% of the amount I need to do. So 75% of, no, you have to work out what is 1.6 75% of, and then I don't even know how to do that really. So what I tend to do, there's a maths question, somebody will be able to answer that. Trying to even think of doing that on Google in my phone, and a bad bandwidth is not like fun, but anyway. So what I do as a sort of a cheeky way out, or a simple way out, is I go, first of all, I go to the 1.6, which I measured here, knowing that it should be a bit higher here to achieve 1.6 there, but I go with the 1.6 and put that back in, and then see what we've got. And it's a conservative reduction and start point to get a feel for, can we go any further? And then I will have a look at the action, and I'll probably take the saddle out and do a little bit more reduction, you know, to a certain fixed amount. And what I'll do is I'll measure it with the caliper as I go. Now this one's showing me that it's a little bit, I need to put a little bit more weight on the treble end, wear that down a little bit quicker, but it's hard to do because there's not much to grip there. So I'm going to try and do it this way. So with the fact, the other good thing is if you do go with the conservative, or your, I suppose you could call it the conservative measure that I've done here, what you'll find is you've got loads of room to play with. So if you get down to the height, or the size of your marker line, and you find out that you've got a bit of a lean to one side or other that you weren't able to control, then you have got space at this point to correct that. So that's a nice aspect of it. Okay, so now we're down to very low action, at which point I'm going to now have a look at, or going to start looking at, whether we need to, I'm going back to this view again because it's easier for a minute. I'll have a look and see whether I need to cut any what's-its down here. You know the thing I'm saying, slots. It all depends on whether there's enough downward force on the saddle to produce vibrations. It can actually, you can get away, inverted commas, with quite a lot, quite a little amount of brake angle, but below a certain point it won't function properly, so you don't want to get to there. But I've gone on the basis that I do want the action starting here. Okay, so it's okay, not bad. And now we're still playing. Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll kind of treat it, I'll play it and try it out for a minute, but knowing that I can put a little slot in here once I get the string out of the way. Now, Buzz needs for both his guitars, he needs the lightest possible action. Sorry, I can't speak while I'm doing that. It's something weird that my brain won't do both things. Well, that's a bit flat for my liking. So what I'm going to do, but it's just above the bridge, so we've used the available room. So when I take this off, I will cut two little slots, or extend the slots a little bit on the B and the E. Now, the last fret action at the moment is currently showing up as, actually, it's not too bad. It's about 2.4. So we've got about half a mil there, and we've got about half a mil on the other side. So that's a good thing. Now, if I take that half mil as well, it's going to further reduce the brake angle, which means, yes, we're going to have to, obviously we're going to have to sort it by cutting those slots as mentioned. You know, some people, I don't know, I think some people kind of look at it and go, oh, you should be doing something with the angle of the neck before you do that. Well, on a budget guitar like this, there isn't really anything you can do. It's not a bolt-on neck. You can't take it off and put shims on it. The only way you'll take it off to put shims on it is if you remove the entire neck. That means breaking the joint apart. And ultimately, that's probably where guitars like this end up, needing a neck reset. But it's not something I do or have done. And I've studied the amount of work it takes and seen what the stages are. And frankly, you know, if a luthier charges 600 quid for it, I think they'd probably be, you know, working more than they're charging. So that's how much is, you know, involved. It's a complex business, I think. Anyway, so what have we got? We know we've got. I'm going to jot it down. We've got another 0.5 of a millimeter we can reduce. And again, if I go 0.5 on there, we've got a 0.5 we can reduce there. If I go 0.5 on here, we'll still be within the margins of safety. But then at this point now, we're going to take the nut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to check it again. I'm just going to take the strings out of the way. I want to keep them on for now because I want them to play a role in getting the nut glued in strongly and securely. So slack them off out of the way. I want to remove the saddle again. Now this gets a little bit harder now. Pushing one end, grab the other. Yeah, it is harder because it's now no longer sticking up as much, so I have to be a little bit more coaxing, and it doesn't want to come out. I don't really want to take all the strings out in order to coax it out. Strings off, I should say. But we may have to. Magnets, they're good, but they can be a bit powerful at times. So let's see if I can just, no, it doesn't want to come out. So if I slack it off a bit more, it's just a pain to take the strings right off, to take the saddle out, and then have to put them all back on again. So that should be able to tip out, maybe fall out. Yes, there we go. That's one way. Okay, so the last tweak for this, and as I say, 0.5 millimeter max, probably not even that much. Now, like I say, drawing a 0.5 millimeter line on this is a bit of a waste of time because it's, you know, you won't be able to draw it accurately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure it from. Actually, this doesn't have notches in it, so no, I'm not gonna play spreading the strings with notches. No. So I'm going to go from where the mark is on the lower E, and that says 638. So let's get that down to 6, and we'll call it quits, shall we? Yes. I mean, that's even being ultra conservative, but of course at this point now the aim will be to reduce it as evenly as possible on both sides. Try and keep the forces leveled out. What did I say? 6.3 to 6. There's the mark. 6.16. So we're not far off. Check the squareness of the bottom. Pardon me. And then just, you know, once I'm kind of in the square perpendicular mode, I'm going to just take it down with a bit of side to side waltzing, rather than move your hands if you can, because that's a better way to get a vertical or a perpendicular right angle bottom. And you know, when you get closer to where you want to be, move to the lighter grit and you have more leeway. Okay, so 5.92, that's good. That'll be my mark. Now, as I said before, we know now that this is going to require, definitely going to require the increase of those slots. But we're now in the zone where we can use this opportunity to take care of the nut as well. Now, For anyone who cares about these things, there's no way to remove this other than to encourage it to separate, if possible, like that, from its glue. And that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to get it loose and it's starting to move. And we should, with a bit of luck, well, you could say drift it out. Might be lucky and be able to drift it out. But we don't know. Support that a bit better. So it would be good if we can drift it out all the way. There we are. It's nice and tidy. Good. There's a little bit of nut material. There's a sort of wodge of glue on the end there, but it's actually come out very cleanly. And this is, again, this is one of these things I would call a pretty clean arrangement. Now, this is I've got a bit of something sticking out here, so it's a bit proud of the surface. I hope it won't keep the nut standing out too far. Okay, so here's our Tusq replacement. The first thing you get to see is it doesn't fit, so we've got to do a shaving in one direction first. Again, we'll use the sort of middle. What we can do, just to give us a guide, is to use the micrometer thing, or digital vernier calipers. 481 that says. This is currently sitting at 508. So 0.2 of a mil. It's also sitting a bit proud on the bottom here, which I can take. Oh, it's got some tags, I should say. Get rid of those. Okay, so my recommendation is do the flat surface. If you're going to thin it down, try first of all to do the flat surface. It's also, you find it's never quite smooth. It's actually got a sort of curve in it. So sanding it flat here isn't going to be a bad thing, full stop. But what you've got to do is you've got to try and keep the pressure at the base end. The tendency is to, it'll tip onto its pointy end. And if that happens, you end up with a kind of taper on it, which we don't want. Okay, this should be spot on the mark. Into the slot we go. Look at that. Woohoo. Okay, that's actually stiffened up a little bit, so I'm going to need to drift it out again. So what we've got now is, I'll come back to that. Let's put the strings on, and we're going to measure how much too high the action is, and then we can do our best to reduce it down. Now, I've been toying with the idea for some time now to turn one of these into an adjustable nut, because the problem you've got when you're customizing or cutting a nut down to fit a guitar is if you're cutting from underneath, it is incredibly difficult to get it to the exact first fret action you want whilst cutting from underneath. It's not impossible, but it's very hard, and it's incredibly easy to go over the mark. And because we're dealing with such tiny sort of heights actions, you know, you can go past the mark very quickly. Just putting it under a bit of load. Now this is where we can hear that buzzing there. That's starting to lose any grip any angle over the. It's still playing though. That's amazing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now measure. Oh, not the calipers. I'm going to use these to measure roughly what we've got in terms of height over the first fret. Now it's a mile, and it's probably going to be all of these bits together, which I don't even know what that adds up to. It's probably just less. Okay, so let's go 1.4, 1.7, 1.95. Okay, 1.95 plus, what was the last one I put on? Okay, 170, 195, 215, 2 mils 15. It's just about on the mark. So we'll go, bass is 2.15 mils, and the treble is, could be similar, could be the same. Bit more actually. Treble is 215 plus 15 is 30, 2.3. I call it about 2.35. 2.35. Now, what we know is we are going to need minus on the 3.5, so we want to aim for 4. So that's going to be 195 minus 195 there, adds 4, gives us 235, and this one is going to be 180 on that side remove, which 180 plus 4 is going to give us 220, so it's 175. 195 and 175 mils. So a little bit precise, and you can see how difficult that starts to get. So that will take us to a 0.4 action, which is conservatively okay too. So now we take this off. Of course, what this will do is this will actually bizarrely slightly increase the brake angle now, because this end's going down. Not so much that we still don't need to do the slots on it. Okay, and like I said, we're going to need to tap this out because it's firmly fitted, but I'm going to go this way, the way we came this time, because it is firmly fitted. I'm not going to thin it down anymore because I like the way that went in and fitted. That's handy. But now we do the marking up thing. Oh, the other thing I want to do with this guitar is the fret ends are a bit on the sharp side in the corners, so I want to take care of those as well. Right, markers. Let's get a pen. Is this on still? No, it's off. Right, what do we say? We said 195 and 175. 195. I mean, as you know, this is, we're dealing with the thickness of pen lines, and nothing is precisely accurate. So we're doing the best we can. 195 on the treble side and 175 on the bass side, and we'll do our best within that scope. So it's going to be fractionally off the straight line, so a bit more on the treble than on the bass. Let's draw that line as accurately as we can, but again conservatively to the line. So I'm not taking any undue risks. We can sort of tweak the minor details a little bit later. So at this sort of scale, we can do this by hand, or you can you can put this in a file and sort of take a fair bit of it down in one go. It's a lot quicker. So if excuse me, I'm just going over to the vise. Did I say file? You put it in a vise, that's what you do with it. And then what you do when you put it in the vise, and you can't see this, you get something like your Shinto rasp, and you get the very fine stuff, and you cut across carefully and stop before the line, because you can't guarantee that you're cutting very straight, but you can take down quite a lot of it quite quickly. Again, it's guessing at the squareness of it right now, but it's easier than doing it on the sandpaper. Okay, so there's it, the bulk of the material taken off, and then we'll go back to the sanding department. I'll go to the line, check it out, we'll measure what we need to remove again after this, and then we'll do it again with the digital caliper to gauge the amount. So that needs a little bit of a tip forward, or push away from me actually in this case, and here to right angle it down, as I call it. Coming down towards the line, straight, nice and straight. A little bit more straightening out. Could do with changing this, but got to get in a new sandpaper order because I'm kind of running low on this stuff. It's Merca Hyomant it's called, and it's Polish or German or something, I can't remember which now. Okay, okay, and I'm going to tip it away from me a fraction now to just get it straightened up. Again, you can see that how much I tip it away to straighten it up is a matter of guesswork, really. And then get down to this last bit here and just hopefully smooth it out with the fine tuning. So because I drew the line conservatively and so on, we should be, I expect to find the action still high of where I ideally want it. Now you might find when you get down to here, because you're dealing with the fatter part of the nut, it may not go in as easily. In this case it's not bad at all. Now, what's it? Oh, sorry, it's now sitting out. I have to be very careful to make sure it sits all the way in. That was trying to sit a little bit out, so we have to put it under full pressure. And if we didn't have it flattened down the first time, oh yeah, nearly on the mark. If we didn't have it all the way flush into the slot, then we'd find ourselves overcutting. That's actually pretty darn spot on. So I think we could be right on the mark. Okie dokie. In fact, what we'll probably find we may be. Let's take a note. Take a note. Well, that is the only thing I would say about that is it's a little higher at the bass, the treble end, but spot on, or if at its absolute lowest at the in fact that sat down a bit further than I originally intended. Okay, so what we can do is we can make a very small lift, but I want to take it down this end a little bit because it's a little bit too much. Yeah, we're coming in at about 0.5. 0.6. 3, 5, 4 and 2, 6. Okay, so maybe it's 7 then. 3 and 4, 7. Yeah, just on 7. Okay. So I think I've caught myself out by it not being squeezed fully into the slot, because I think it was just wedged a bit before, so I'm going to have to recover. Now the way I prefer to do this is to use some Tusq material to do it. I've got some to hand, so I might just put a very, very thin lifting shim on this and then take it back. So I think what happened is this stuck a little bit in there, and it could be because we've still got some sticky stuff stopping it going down. Damn. Well, okay. So it's going to delay me just a little bit. Let's see what we've got. Spare one of these. Spare one of these. Can I borrow some material, please, from one of these? That one and that one. That one and that one. Okay. Actually, what colour is that? Similar. I might just the material doesn't really matter. What matters is it's roughly the same colour as I said on the previous video. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get this to the right height without having any what should I say, without getting it to the right height without cutting into the slots. And the problem is I find it very, very, very difficult, as you can see, to get it right to that point without it overcutting, and then I go under and I have to correct it, which it's a better outcome, but it's not guaranteed each time, because every time you overcut you have to, yeah, you have to add an incredibly thin little wedge of material to the bottom, and that acts as a shim. Then I've got to cut it all back down, and then we have to sand it back to where we need it. Get on there and stick together. Little monkey devil, stick together. And of course, as you all know, super glue sticks everything except the pieces you want to stick together. Except it's done there. Thank you. I'm just going to try and press it down. Now what I'm going to do with this now, to begin with, is because I only need an absolute, like a infinitesimally small piece of this. I'm going to now, when this is dry, I'm going to cut it down with the bandsaw and then sand it back again. A bit of a pain, but it's all we can do, really. It ends up giving you back a 0.1 or so shim, which you couldn't make and stick on, so you have to sort of stick on first and make as a result of it. So I'm going to make some noise, and what I'll do is I'm going to leave the microphone there while I go and do the bandsaw-y thing for a second, so you don't get too deafened. Right, a couple of bits of guide wood, please. Plastic, cut the plastic, grab the plastic, cut the plastic, seize the plastic, hold the plastic down. Fabulous. Chopped down to size, and still tons left over, so a fair bit to do to wear it down, but better to start with more than less. And then I'll sort of tidy up as we get near the bottom of it. There we are, nice and smooth. It'll take a while, so I apologise now for the boredom part of it. Just want to clean up the front edge here. It's okay, and that will go into the slot, sit out of the way. Need to clean up the back edge a little bit. Obviously I don't want to take too much off there because I don't want it to go much thinner. It's not the end of the world if it goes a little thinner. I'm just trying to do enough to clean it up. It went out, was it yesterday? No, yeah, it was only yesterday, but I did some work last night and filmed it. But yesterday we had a run to the Halfords, which was... I'd sort of got in my mind the the old big bike shop in Plymouth that I was going to go to, and then I'd forgotten that it had closed down somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, but it hadn't closed, sorry, it had moved from this particular building, and what they'd done is they'd moved from a place where I could park outside and quite easily, you know, pull some cardboard boxes out through their front doors to the waiting car, cut the boxes up smaller, get them in the car and run for the hills, and that was very convenient. But of course, as with everything that works just the way you need it to work, somebody comes along and changes it. So they moved into the centre of town, and I don't really think I stand much of a chance of parking in there. So I sort of had to make a split second decision yesterday, which was right, that's it. We're abandoning that bike shop and we're going after Halfords, which was a good decision because they're still in business, everything's still going well, but they're doing loads of roadworks around that area, and it seemed to be quite difficult to find them. But you know you're a sad person when you get a great deal of joy out of discovering what do they call it? A cage full of cardboard. You know, when you get pleasure out of that, you've reached the proper heights of geekiness. Right, let's see what's happening here. Get in and stay in. Right, so I'm sort of back where I was. Again, preserving the most important part of this deal, which is we want the the slots untouched. We don't want to dig into them with files, if possible. I mean, I tell you, from my point of view, it is 10 tons easier just cutting down to the right height. And if I can't get it this time, then at some point I'd probably just have to do that. Wrong strings, wrong thing. But yeah, it's so much easier, but I try not to because it just, I like to keep those nut slots as per the factory if we can. So, right. So now we're back at a reasonable height. Tighten all this up. Do a bit of very careful measuring again about the gaps. And then this time I'm going to be absolutely sure that this is seated properly. It is on both sides. Good. Right. We'll get to tune. Take no risks. Okay, so height of action down at this end, I think we're about 50, I'm guessing, but it could be a bit more. Could it be 40? We could be spot on the base end. Okay, 50, 45, can we get 45? So it's got to be 50 then. Hello, 20, 30, 50. That's more than that then, okay. 60. Oh, somebody wasn't playing fair the first time. 70. Okay. Anybody for 80? There's one here so thin that it folds all the time. 70 and that's 25. Oh my god, this is so fiddly. And 10, 80. Call it 80. What's happening on the treble side? More. Okay, that's probably going to be 1 then. 80 on the bass. Ooh, quite a bit more on the treble. Okay, 120. 80 on the bass, 120 on the treble. More. Okay, let's call it 140. 80 and 140. More than that. Okay, blimey, what's going on? Something weird. 150. 80 and 150, unless I'm gone completely mad. No, that's more than 80. I am bonkers. Okay. That is 150. Forget the 80. I don't know what's going on. 150. Okay, 150. Let's call it 165. It would be nice if it was the same amount each side. 165, 150. 160. Let's try 160. Oh, blimey. 150, 140, 120. 160. 160. That's 160. Okay, 160, probably 150, I would say. Let's try it one more. 10. 150. 10. 160, did I say? Yes. 150. 160 and 150. Okay, that's 150. 160 and 150. 160 and 150. We want minus 120. And we want minus 110. We're back in that place again, and then we're going to do it from this end. This time I'm going to measure very carefully from both ends. And we'll get there, I promise you, we'll get there. Right. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to measure the two ends, and we're going to go from there. So this one at the notch, although it doesn't go into the notch, measures, we've got 9/16, right? So I'm going to write 9/16 on the treble. We're going to go from 9/16 minus 120, which equals, we'll call it 8 as our target. Okay, on this side, we go from 843. And we're taking off 110. What did I say? 843, 843 to 733. Okay. So those are our two measured targets on the sanding block. My wrists are hurting. Okay, now I'm going to revert or go to this because I find this a little bit easier to work. I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I'm just going to tidy up the ends. Good. Good. Right, so we're talking about, it's going to be so little on here. We're talking about 1.2 mils, so tiny, and a fraction more on the treble end than the bass end. Here we go. So all that means I'm going to do is just push a little harder to begin with on the bass end, and then, sorry, treble end, and then I'm going to sort of even up the loading and hope we get where we're going. So 843 to 733. Thank you, reset. 835 coming down. 902 coming down. Onwards we go. Same amount each side now. Even pressure. Slow. There's going to be nothing left of this shim. So how does that work? I don't get it. Have I just gone and shimmed this for no reason? Because if I go past the mark with this and there's nothing left of the shim, then I have done it for no reason, which seems completely insane. Okay, 818. Got half a mil. Is there a half a mil in there? Possibly. We're heading for 8 over here. 872. Let's go over to this not so hungry stuff. Let's keep going. You see why it's so much easier to cut the slots down. I mean, the actual amount of shim in there now is going to be a fag paper's width. If that, we're on 865, and we need to be on 8. 110, 9, 16, 8, yep, and we're on 801, and we've got nearly half a mil to go there, and this doesn't seem like there's enough material on there. I'm just going to put it back in here. It's making me nervous because it doesn't seem to be following any logic. That little creaky noise there is the thing that's slightly bothering me because it is fully in, so I'm just going to do this for my sanity, because if somehow I've completely miscalculated and gone and shimmed it for no reason, then it's a bit silly, but no harm done. But I don't understand why I would have read it so wrong. Anyway. Looks pretty good. That little creak as it sits right down that extra little bit. So we're at very close. I mean, it's such a small amount now. Let's see what a 0.4 of a mil under there looks like. Fresh air. Fresh air. So let's just double check it. Since we're in the measuring mode, let's get it right. So we reckon that's 0.7. Barely on 0.7. This will be lower. So we're going to take more off the treble. 0.7 to what, 0.5? 0.7, 0.5 maybe, 0.6, 0.7 to 0.6. So they're pretty close, but it feels like they're off from I mean, they're way off each other. So it's not 0.6, 0.55, 0.7 and 0.55, 0.7 and 0.55. There. So 0.15 on the bass side and 0.3 on the treble side. Okay, we'll get there. So this is what it takes. It's going to be very exact. Right. Where is the thing? Going out this way, maybe? Okay, here we go. We're on the home run now. Home run? Yes. So, 0.3 on the treble side and 0.15 on the thingy side. So we'll go back to our measuring. We'll remeasure it right on the edge. 8.6. 8.6, 8.6, and we'll go. See, it's so, I mean, by this stage, it's so relatively inaccurate. 7.98, so that's 8. 8.6 and 8, and we're going to go target of 8.3 and 7.85. 8.3 and 7.85. Now, the reason the treble looks higher is because I can't get the thing into the notch quite the way, so the string actually sits further in there, but I can only measure it from where the file calipers sit. Okay, so 0.3 on the treble side, 0.515 on the bass side. So to that end, I'm pressing down almost exclusively on the treble side and dragging the bass side of the deal. So let's have a look. 8.6, 8.55. We want to get to 8.3. Bass side, 8.08. It's gone up. There we go. 799 hasn't moved at all. We'll get there. This is nearly now on the treble side. It's nearly wafer thin. I can hardly see the shim. It's like a piece of transparent paper. 8.48, 795. We've got 10 on the bass side and a bit more on the treble side. Whew. Precision, baby. 794. So we're 0.1 away on the bass side, and we are 8.4. We are 0.1 away on the treble side. So we're even Stevens, really. So just pushing in a straight line now. Equal distance or equal pressure, I should say. 8.43. Still 13 above. 79995. A bit more. I think I'm going to stop here. I think that's as close as we're going to get. 8.4, we're a tenth of a mil above 796, 10 above. All right, tiny bit more. Come on, that's it then, right? Promise me. That's going to grind through into the Tusq. I mean, the shimming part of this is now practically invisible. Right, we're on the mark for the treble, and we're a fraction above for the bass. So I'll just drag this a tiny bit more on this side, and I think I'm calling quits, calling time on this. Dun, da, 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 da. Now when you, by the way, if you're in that situation, like do what I just did, be very careful, because I just shooed away a little bit of plastic left over from somewhere, a little shard of the old nut or something. But if that was in there before and I've just cleared it away now, then the thing will sit a bit lower, and it's enough to mess up the thing. Now with a nut that I haven't glued down, I'm just putting pressure on the middle two strings first, like it was an adjustable nut, just to keep it in place. Okay, now a slow process of elimination. How do I get that so close by ear? Oh, wrong one. Good, right, I'm happy. So, one more time. Now this is fitted in here quite nicely, so we don't really, oh hang on a sec, we don't have to worry too much about positioning it, because or it moving. It probably won't move at all under play, but we don't want to leave it loose, because if it does move then it's a right pain and you have to take it out and glue it and stuff. So what I propose we do is see if this wants to stay there. We could count our lucky chickens and leave it there, but if we take it out a minute and we what we might just do is put a tiny bit of glue on the front edge here, slide it into place, and then with a bit of luck, if we can get it lined up ASAP with these strings, which I now can't do because it's misbehaving. Get on there, get on there, get on there. Space it according to correct spacing, and then we want to get the thing down on there quickly. That's bloody useless. Fling! Get it under pressure before it sticks. Make sure it's bedded in both sides. Yep. And then load it some more. It's not a very fun thing to do, and the reason that gets panicky is because I'm using a little bit of super glue. If we left it to a slower setting glue of some less voracious type, we wouldn't have to go into that sort of rush thing, which is a pretty good advertisement for using wood glue for that. Although I think that's probably a good argument, and I think I ought to revert to that. He says, thinking out loud. Right, okay, so chuck away a couple of bits of stuff. We're ready to go now with the restring. We're ready to go with cutting a very small slot. Now, we'll say that the nut is nicely put down, or bedded in, should we say, and it will now stick of its own very well. And now's the time to take care of the slots. Sorry, I'm going to zoom you out a minute. The view's terrible. The view's terrible. What I'll do, let's do the flying thing. Let's put you up here in the world of the, if I can open this up, now you're in the world of the magic arm. And we see what we can see. How did I see what we could see before? Oh, there we are. Yeah, we're down at this end. Let's kind of dangle you there. Dangle you there. You're still recording. Good. Right. So we're looking at this. I'm just taking the strings off. So what I want to do is next is increase some slots. Now I've done this before with little files, really. There's no real way to do it. A little saw might help. Let's remove these. Yeah, we can do it with a saw, or we can do it with a file or whatever. We'll get a little notch in there. Now, usually these thin strings help us by marking where they already sit on the surface of the bridge, so we can see the start point, and we just basically we need to cut that in. Now we can't get a cutting disc in there. Let me bring one just to kind of make the point, but here's a little disc. If we tried to bring a cutting disc in here, we could technically, if we could get horizontal. See, the problem is the tool makes you want to come in at that angle. If we could get horizontal, we probably could just about start the slot off there. So let's have a look, see what's feasible and what isn't. What's the time now? Hey, 8:30. These are little diamond covered cutting discs for the Dremel. Bought them mainly for taking care of troublesome nuts. Okay, so let's have a look at the angles we can get. Actually, it's not bad at all. Now, what we don't want to do, obviously, is we don't want to go down on the back end. And we could put some tape over the back just as a sort of indicator. If we see ourselves hitting the tape on the back end, we know we've gone too far. So it's really the B and the E I'm going to concern myself with, and I'm going to use another bit of tape very cunningly to lift that out. Okay, so here we go. I want to see what we got spinning. Okay, now let's get some tape on here. We can rest on there if we need to. Bit of plastic gone in there. Let's have a feel. Okay. So, can we get down to there without? It's a tiny angle, but it's not much. So let's have some power. So all I want to do is I want to start this angle at the front of the thing and perpendicular as close as I can get. So I'm going to kind of come down on it like that. Just starting to kiss the back of the thing. And again, just sort of kissing the back of there as well. So we don't see anything, so that's a good marker. So there's two little thingies there. Now it's not very deep in there, so we probably also then want to cut into there a little bit. So I've got me a little razor saw here, which I also bought for doing nut adjustments, and with a bit of luck we should be able to persuade it to do a little bit of it's cutting my hand, do a little bit of duty here. So really the important bit is this bit right down here. We want to let the string come up as high as it can. Sorry. Yeah, we want it to come forward as far as it can in this slot. Now I'll do the same here, but I've got to remember that this razor saw is actually quite thin, so it may not make it wide enough to accommodate the B string. And again, it might. So we want it to be as 45 degree-ish as possible. In a way, ideally a bit even steeper if we could. So there's the two slots. We can get, put that there, we could see if we have a chance of widening it with these Hosco files. Again, there's not a lot of reach with those. Let me see if I can control them by hand. They're sort of digging in a bit because they fatten up, so we can sort of probably push down and widen it a little bit like this. And again, it doesn't hurt widening it. We'll do the same for the B. It doesn't matter. I mean, this isn't, obviously it's not a tuning thing, so the string doesn't have to really move anywhere smoothly, and if it sticks in there we don't really care. We just need it to come up there. And I shouldn't really have taken off me shouldn't have taken the strings off, should I? I should have kept them on so I could press them in there and try them out. I don't think I've got anything else that's going to reach much further into there than that. I think that's probably could well be the limits of my slotting. Sorry about the view a minute. Maybe we get down a bit further down here. Again, by the time we get down there, it's quite a wide hole. But again, that isn't the problem. As long as the string can come up forward. I think that's going to be enough. Let's go with it. We'll kind of report by default. If it's not enough, then we'll worry about it separately. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is clean everything up. But first, before I do that, I'm going to do a quick rundown with the file. Let's see. Oh, look, we can look at full length. So with the fret end file, I'm just going to take off these little, what I think are these little sharp bits. So it's kind of, funnily enough, it's easier to do one side of it and then go back and do the other. You can get a faster technique going. Now you have to be careful how you handle your tools here. If you're not confident with them, get some of this groovy stuff, the Gorilla Tape. And if you're not confident with that, get some green frog tape down first, right up to the edge there, and put the Gorilla Tape on top of the green tape. And it just gives you protection against your file running off the edge and scraping onto the guitar finish. It's all too easy to do, and you just don't want to do it and then feel bad about it and having to try and fix it. So this gives you that sort of don't mind, or peace of mind. So that's all the way down that way, then back the other way. See, it's a little burr of metal comes up when you do this, and you have to kind of get it gone. Now I'll go down it with a little piece of paper, sandpaper, at an angle. Now that will cut a little bit of the binding edge, but it's better to do that and have smooth, gentle, non-sharp frets. Okay, which way are we going? I'm doing both of them together now. Look at me go. Yeah, I think it's better to have smooth, non-sharp fret ends than it is to have perfectly pristine plastic binding. All it does is, in softening the fret ends, you end up just softening the edge of the binding too. It no longer has that razor sharp finish. But if you keep the angle, laid back enough on the sandpaper, you can sort of do has minimal effect on the binding. But it's where the fret joins the binding that creates this little corner that your fingers seek out. So what I would do here, 180, where have they gone? What's this one? This is 120, that's a bit rough. I want 240. A little bit of 240. So that's a detail here that it's nice to be able to take care of, so that it's a smooth thing to play. Okay, after this one, I've got to string up this offset one here, and then I'll be done for the evening. Although I didn't quite get where I wanted to get with JT's preamp, I've got as far as I will get with it until I get a new one in from the Polish supplier. So again, this is where the Gorilla Tape comes in very handy. Okay, so let's soften that edge up, and then we'll do the same on this side with a nice 240 grit, leaning back so it polishes up the ends of the frets, as well as lifting off any little metal burrs that the file just lifted up. There we go. Lovely. then off comes the frog tape, which is pretty safe stuff. And then the gaffer tape can do the heavy protection work on top of that. Okay, so I'm going to now give this a clean up with naphtha, and then we'll oil the fingerboard as a last thing before we put things together. Like I say, we'll go on the basis of we'll worry about it if it doesn't do what we want, as in those little notches, they're not effective, then we'll think again. Well, it's all we can do is to cut them, but it does. I've done it before, so it works pretty well. Whoops. So I rub down with naphtha, get rid of all the grease and fingerprints, clean everything up. Headstock, tuners. Be careful, I'll probably lose the saddle if I do this. Yep, there it goes. And the back. Right. Well, a bit longer than expected, only because of the needing to shim. And you saw that by the time I had shimmed that and come back down to the correct height, the actual thickness of that shim, if we could even measure it now, would be so incredibly thin it would be hardly worth speaking of. But it's, you know, it's what you have to do if you're going to get it precisely to the right playing action. It's the only way you can get it. So and such a tiny amount of shim makes that difference to get it where I need it to be, which is why cutting downwards is actually such an easy thing to do for a guitar tech compared to cutting up or gauging it from the bottom upwards. And of course that's why ultimately the adjustable nut is the best solution of them all, because you can get to exactly the action you want without a single issue. Right, here we go. Time to restring, and then we'll be in the bag with this one. Restring the other one, and we'll be heading home. Right, here we go. So, like I say, that's the way of getting a few more years out of a guitar that has begun to change its shape, without a doubt. You know, it's heading for eventually, when the action goes, if and when the action rises up again, then you might be looking at the need for the inevitable neck reset, or when it comes to sort of middle of the range guitars, or top of the range budget guitars, I don't know what you'd call this, but when it comes to that, then you'd probably be just as well looking for a new one of some other kind. There's a point at which it doesn't make a lot of sense to think of spending £600+ on a guitar of this age and the curvature and so on. Okay, so now that is where we're going to see the difference. These E and the B string are going to come out in a steeper angle. But before I do that, I'm going to put some oil on the board as a final thing before we string up, just to give it some vibrant. People say rehydrate the board, and of course it's an oxymoron. No, it's incorrect, isn't it? You don't rehydrate with water, with oil. You re-lipidate or something. You grease it. You grease the board. But you can see it looks much nicer. But oil does that to any wood, so that's why we use oil as a finish, because it brings out the grain and the contrasts in the wood and the colour, because it cuts through the dust effectively and the dryness. So there you go, looking pretty. My wrist is hurting. So let's start on the bass side. We'll leave the best to last, i.e. whether we've got the break angle we need. To make it easy, I'm just getting the tuner posts all lined up in a row. Just makes the job easier, especially when we go to the left hand side. And then my recommended technique, although you can't see it up close right now, is pull the string all the way through, pull it back 1 fret's worth at the first fret, and then start winding it. Hold it, direct the held string over the loose string. As it comes round, press the held string down and yank the loose string up in the air, so that the loose string kind of gets trapped in the middle between 2 strings. It sort of locks it off. And then you can chop it off. It's very efficient in terms of there's not too much string wound onto the post. There's plenty enough to hold it there, which you need, and it's just a tidy, consistent way of doing it. Hurrah! I think, you know, I'm used to doing this, but I think I forget very easily how much of a difference this will feel to Buzz. You know, and Buzz, for medical, you know, hand strength reasons, needs this to be as light to play as possible. So, you know, some critics will say, oh, you don't want to have guitars with that low an action, or why would you have an acoustic at 2mm at the last fret? Well, the answer to that is people like Buzz and others who want to be able to play the acoustic guitar, and want to be able to do it despite, you know, ill health or hand strength or hand injury issues. You know, and to me it gets really galling when somebody in the sort of the abstract world of you should and shouldn't, because I read it in a forum type of intelligence, tells someone like Buzz that they shouldn't have a low action that they can now play for a good few more good years of, you know, get a good few more years of enjoyment out of playing the guitar. And it just galls me that somebody in their arrogance thinks that they know better than what somebody actually needs. And you know, as you know, I've said this before, but the internet, the world, but unfortunately the internet, because of its anonymous, distanced, safe behind your kind of your keyboard, you know, people just shout their mouths off in ways they wouldn't. Funny enough, I'm experiencing that right now in our village. A local keyboard warrior is being the most repulsive troll on Facebook. There's so much anger and bitterness against me for having dared to become a parish councillor and do take a stand on what a majority in the village want, rather than what this particular person wants. And to be trolled and abused for that is such a pity. Okay, yeah, well, it's a bit of, I mean, it's more break angle than we had. So the question is, how does it sound? Press down, press down. Okay. You'll be accusing me of having perfect pitch next. Okay, that's enough to play. It's at the end of its adjustment limit, but it's a nice low action on this guitar that you wouldn't otherwise get. But like I said, there's no way around it. If you want this low action at this stage in the guitar's life, that's what you're going to have to do to get it, because you won't get it any other way. So, apart from the neck reset, or you could shave down the whole bridge if you felt like it. Plane it down and kind of go again from there. but you might have to be prepared to route the piezo pickup hole deeper. There we have it. I'm going to call it quits. A bit more stretching to do, but there it is, the APX600 with its lowered action. You can hardly see the slots that are cut there. You know they're there because that's what gives us back the brake angle. But that's about it. There's no more downward adjustment to be had on this guitar, but this will play nicely for a good few years yet, and be enjoyable to play as well. Got a little bit of relief, which is good. Okay, thank you for watching, and see you again very soon.